Oh no, dog, straight.
And then show yourself, yeah. So technology is becoming so advanced, and video games along with television are the #1 hobby for children and young teens today. Even though these devices mean the world to these youth, their behavior becomes succumbed to elevated violence during these video games. I'm going to go over 3 things that has to do with violence in video games. The first one is violence and the violence and the immunity and behavioral changes. Second one is the example of the other side when it comes to this debate. And the third thing is how parents can protect their children. So the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, they quoted that hundreds of studies have shown that children begin to become immune to violence, even if they think it's okay to use violence. They even think it's okay to use violence to solve issues because of these video games. So here's one example right here. A lot of kids own this video game. Grand Theft Auto is said to be one of the most popular video game series among young teens, and this was determined by Harvard Medical School. In 2008, the Pew Research Center reported that 97% of children will play between ages of 12 to 17 play video games, and out of those, 2/3 of the video games are violent. Some people argue, the other side of the debate is some people argue that they don't see any behavioral changes in their children when they play these violent video games. For example, kids can play the violent video game and they can differentiate real life situations between fake situations in video games. 62% of parents notice no effects with their children, but even though they notice no behavioral effects with their children while playing these video games, they still agree that parents should try to protect their children just in case anything were to happen later on. Parents can protect their children from these violent video games by limiting video games for one, and for two, by limiting the use of violent video games like Grand Theft Auto. This can help prevent even the slightest ability for children to have any type of behavioral changes or to be used to violence. So, in conclusions, many concerns arise about video game violence and television as well, and how it could cause changes in your children's behavior. Like I stated before, behavior of children can become violent, and they might use the violence to solve certain issues because of what they see on video games. I also, went over the other side of the debate and how even though they don't see any changes with their children in behavior, they still agree that parents should try to protect it. And then I also went over ways of how parents can protect their children from this violent behavior in video games. I hope that all this pertinent info that I share with you today can help minimize the use of violence in video games towards your children. That way they can grow up to have a healthy lifestyle. Thank you.
Amen.
You guys, thanks a lot.